Yeah, right. Good morning, everyone. Jamie, would you like to just get the door because it's open? Because otherwise, there's a lot of people working next. Oh, here's Susan. So, yeah, it's down the bottom, Jamie. Well, welcome everyone to our policy and strategy meeting this morning. We do have some time constraints because there is a special full council meeting at 11:30, which has to start within 10 minutes of its time from my reading of standing orders in the past. So I'll just ask Councillor Hill to open with Karakia. Thank you. And for those online, that was Karakia. Sorry, the microphone wasn't on. So I'd just first like to acknowledge that one, we've got Councillor Walker on Zoom. Good morning, Trinity. And we've also got the news media with today and board member David Armstrong from the Motueka Community Board. Okay. So public forum, we have none. So that's nice and simple. Apologies, I've got apologies this morning from Councillor Greening, Councillor Tufnell and the Mayor for lateness. I know he's at a Waimea meeting, so moved Councillor Ogilvie, seconded Councillor Dowler. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Right, now, declarations of interest, nothing new. No. Late items, we've got none. Confirmation of minutes. Now we've got a number of minutes to get through this morning. So first of all, we've got the Strategy and Policy Committee meeting of the 14th of April. Have I got a mover? Councillor McKenzie, seconded Councillor Hill. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. And then we've got the confidential minutes of the 14th of April. Have I got a mover for that? Councillor, you haven't got a nameplate on. Councillor Butler and Councillor McKenzie seconded. Oh, it is two. I couldn't read. I was having a senior moment. Oh, I can remember yours. All right, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Now, then we've got 2 minutes from the cycling and walking strategy. So someone from those committees. So Councillor Bryant moved, seconded. I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Butler. And those are from the 26th of April. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. And then the cycling and walking strategy deliberations on the 9th of May. Right, I've got Councillor McKenzie moved, seconded Councillor Bryant. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Okay. I'll just move to my chair's report. I just made some comments. We started the water conservation order for Korowai Tupu Springs. It started on Monday. Unfortunately, it couldn't be held in Golden Bay, although there was a po-ferry at the Marae and then an opening at the, I think it was at the rec centre, and then they adjourned to the Nelson courtrooms, and the bulk of it has been done on Zoom. So the lawyers are in the Nelson District Court. We have 10 staff in the Heafy room, and witnesses from the expert witnesses are in the Wangapeka room when they give evidence. There isn't a lot of room in there. I've sat in and the mayor's sat in at different times. So, and there will be possibly some actions for us coming out of that, but I think they're just on the witnesses now. This is the first week. There will be another week as well. And the other thing that I've noted in my report is the work we're doing on the future development strategy. We were here all day yesterday and made some progress, and we're here again this afternoon. And then we've got 2 days of deliberations next week. So someone like to move my report, or Councillor McKenzie? Yes.
Thank you. I'm happy to move your report, but I also just have a question. If you could just remind me with respect to the future development strategy. So we've got obviously the councillors who are on the joint deliberations panel, and then the strategy will come to joint committee for sign off. Will there be an opportunity for us councillors who are not on the deliberations subcommittee to just be more informed prior to having to make a final decision?
Ms Edwards, if you'd like to comment.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. The intent is that what will come to the Joint Committee on the 27th of July is the policy decisions that will be needing to be made for staff to come to proceed with adopting, preparing the final FDS document. So you'll get on the 27th of July, Joint Committee will get policy, will make the policy decisions. Staff will then go away, make the changes to the document, and either bring the document back to the Joint Committee if the Joint Committee wishes to do it, or if the Joint Committee is happy to delegate that decision down to the subcommittee, you could actually enable the subcommittee to do that, because at that point it's just a matter of ticking the boxes for the to make sure that the decisions that the Joint Committee's made have been reflected in the document. So but that would be a decision for the Joint Committee to make. If the rest of the council would like a briefing ahead of time, we can arrange that. So just if that's your indication you would like that, and that there is a lot of material, there's a lot to go through, so I can see some advantage in that. Should you choose to do that, we will make sure it happens.
Yep.
If I could, through the chair, thank you. I just think for me personally, this is an important document that's going to need to be approved, and I would appreciate the opportunity to maybe have a briefing. So I'll just register that interest. Thank you.
I think that makes sense, and I'm sure the staff will be able to accommodate it. Yesterday we had 357 pages to read, 4 hours, so there is a lot of detail, that's for sure. Councillor Bryant.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure, Susan, I actually thought there was a date scheduled for a council workshop with all councillors around the future development strategy in between, but I just can't see it. So that might have been the opportunity that Councillor McKenzie was looking for.
I'll have a quick look and I'll let you know if I can find it in my diary.
But I'm sure we can schedule one.
Yeah, well, that would be a good idea by the sound of it.
I think for us and Nelson City, that makes sense.
And perhaps before the Joint Committee.
I would think that would be appropriate if possible.
There's a workshop on the 28th
Right. Okay.
June. I see the diary here. Joint Committee, Tasman and Nelson Confidential Workshop FDS or Council.
That's the one I was looking for.
28th
Yeah.
June.
But that's joint, so whether we want to do it there or on our own.
I think doing it separate would be best.
Maybe
Ms.
on,
Edwards.
on the morning
Yep.
of that day.
Susan?
If you would like to have a discussion yourselves prior to that, we can organise that as well.
I think that will be useful, and I'm seeing nods around the table, so that will benefit us. Right, so my report's been moved. Have I got a seconder, Councillor Bryant?
But I haven't finished.
Oh, you haven't finished yet. Just remember our time constraints. Right.
Just the water conservation order, yeah, commend you for the work you've done and with relation to that and all the stuff, but it has been a long, protracted process, I must say.
This one is quick compared to the Motueka one, and I'm thinking they're actually, the judge was quoting the Rangitata one, which I was a submitter on some 20 plus years ago, and both of those took over 10 years, so we're under that. But it's not finished yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's moved and seconded. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Dennis.
I was just going to pick up because I suspect what you were talking about, Councillor Bryant, was also the effort that the council put in through the flag process and all the investigation prior to that before it even became a water conservation order.
Well and truly.
And unfortunately, the newspaper headlines didn't really acknowledge the effort and the work that council and the community have put into, investigating some of the water management challenges in the Takaka catchment. But yes.
I would agree with you, Mr. Bush King. There was certainly some negative comments when an awful lot of work has gone in by both our staff and the community for a number of years. And the amount of work that Lisa in particular has put in has been huge. Right, so we'll go to the next thing. So it's a request for establishment of the re-establishment of the regional pest. Is that next? Oh, no, we'll do him. He's on his feet because this will be quick.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, did we pass the resolution for your report?
I didn't.
Or did I
I
miss
thought I
it?
did. Oh, you did before Dennis spoke. Yeah, I did before Dennis spoke. I definitely did put it before Dennis spoke. Right. Paul.
Councillor Bryant. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This hopefully is just a procedural matter. The original pest management plan is a joint plan with Nelson City Council. It was developed working with a joint committee of the two councils, the Regional Pest Management Joint Committee. There's a number of things we've identified that should be looked at again within that pest management plan. It was the first one under the new bit of legislation, and there's some improvements that could be made. In order to pursue those improvements, we're asking that come the next term of this council, that the Regional Pest Management Plan, Joint Committee is re-established, and that this council requests Nelson City Council passes a resolution and appoints me to that joint committee. That's it.
That's what I thought, and I understand it actually is after the election. So,
Yes, indeed.
Councillor Bryant.
I'm happy to move. I think Paul's covered it really well, but previously it's worked really well, and it's one thing we do work positively on, and we'd see no boundaries.
Certainly don't. So I've got it. Councillor Butler, do you wish to speak to it or just second it? So moved Councillor Bryant, seconded Councillor Butler. All those in favour, unless there is other discussion. I don't see any. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. I said it'd be quick, Paul.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yes, I did. I did. I did it before Trevor, before I asked Dennis to speak. Right, so cycling and walking strategy is next up. So we've got a team coming up. And who's going to lead it? Claire? I'm sure you've got a few questions. I've only got one. So, and I know Councillor Dowler has a list.
Morena koutou katoa. Hopefully this shouldn't take too long either. So through the chair, the purpose of this referral report is to request approval for the final walking and cycling strategy. Over the last several months, the hearings panel has received all the information and listened to submissions from 27 speakers. There were 244 submissions overall, and deliberated on the strategy. So today we're presenting the final strategy for approval. I just wanted to give a little bit of an overview, particularly for the councillors who weren't part of the deliberations panel, just to give a little bit more background. So as I said, there were 244 submissions received, so a really high level of community engagement on this. And out of those, there was 80% approval for the general proposal. So we're hearing a really strong desire from the community for this kind of change and moving in this direction. So on all of the other points, the specific points of the strategy, such as the reallocation of road space to create separated cycleways and slow speed neighborhood greenways, these also received around 75% support from the community. So again, we're really hearing really strongly that this is the direction we want to go in. In addition to the 244 submissions we received, we also made a real effort to make sure that everybody who lived on the roads where road space reallocation is proposed to create separated cycleways was notified individually of the plan and given a chance to put their thoughts in about it. So we delivered letters to every single residence in all the urban areas addressed in the strategy on all those key routes where separated cycleways are proposed. And from all of those letters, we received 51 responses from those people. And this is where we have some really interesting statistics too. Out of those people who would be potentially affected by no longer being able to park on the street in front of their home, 57% of those respondents said that they approved of doing this and it was the right thing to do. A further 10% approved it, but had some questions. So that's 67% approval by people who personally may be affected by this and were notified individually. So I just want to say that this is an aspirational strategy, but it's also best practice. We know now that designing our road networks for cars is not enough now. We need to ensure the safety of all our road users, particularly the most vulnerable people. So children, the elderly, the disabled, and anybody using a different mode of transport, anybody walking or cycling. So this strategy is really about that holistic network planning, not leaving any gaps in the network, and in making sure that everybody who wants to has the choice to walk or cycle safely and conveniently. There's a few other little points that I wanted to bring up as well. Since we last talked on the 9th of May, the emissions reduction plan has come out from central government. And this strategy here very strongly aligns with the targets in that plan as well, and also aligns with the Richmond Program business case and the regional land transport plan. So everything is aligning very well here. Additionally, we're in the process of applying for funding from Waka Kotahi for the Streets for People program. And this is potentially $1 to $2 million to roll out these sorts of interventions in our urban areas. And have the approval of this strategy puts us in a really strong position to be receiving that funding. They really want to see that high level governance support for this kind of action. So I'll leave you with that. If you have any further question or comments, Jamie or Drew, that you wanted to add. We did discover a proofing error in 3 of the maps. Just recently, those have been addressed. You should have hard copies of all of those. And also the new strategy with these updated maps was also put up for you to see. So the fully correct strategy. And the resolutions have been amended to take these 3 maps into account.
Claire, could you just explain what the proofing error was for the benefit of the councillors and what it means?
Sure, through the chair. When the maps came through, we decided to change the notation of the separated cycleway instead of being a solid blue line to make it clear that the intention is overall to be on both sides of the road, unless decided in in future detailed design stage. And so when those 2 lines were separated, it created a gap in the middle of the road with no color, and the designers just filled that color with the 50K notation, but it wasn't meant to be confirmed 50K location. So the change is just taking that color out. So you'll notice on those 3 maps, there's a white sections with 2 blue lines on either side, and that's the change. So that was an error that wasn't made in the deliberations and wasn't in any of the resolutions and wasn't in the consultation document. So it was just purely a proofing error. But that's been fixed now.
Right, well, thank you, Claire. I know I've got 3 questions, and certainly I got a number of phone calls and emails from people on Hill Street concerned about losing both sides. And I've been assured by staff, and I'm sure it'll be confirmed today, that this is a high-level strategy and detailed design means that there could be changes in the future. So I think it's aspirational, but I think if you look at traffic that we've currently got because of what's going on, Hill Street is one of our very busiest rat runs at the moment. simply because of what's happening and the congestion on the state highway. So that's a concern. But I've got two councillors. In fact, I know I've got three because Councillor Bryant wants to. We'll start with Councillor Butler, then Councillor Bryant, then Councillor Dowler. How's that?
Thank you, Chair. It gives me pleasure to move this draft strategy, this strategy from draft into policy, because I think that when given the opportunity, people want to cycle, and we've seen that. And because they want to cycle, we need to give them the space to do it. That will reduce our climate emissions, and it will flow on into the other policies that will improve, make our places more livable. It is also focusing on urban, where we're going to get the greatest gains. So, yep, happy to move.
Thank you. Councillor Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to second the resolution, and as you yourself have said, it is a high-level strategy, and it will be very appropriate for us to adopt this. The subcommittee diligently listened to the submissions, had a workshop, and then had the deliberations. We did get down into a lot of detail over those things, which I think by and large is reflected in some amendments to the original resolutions. So I don't see any need to get down into the detail today, hopefully. It is high level and aspirational, and will take some time to come to fruition, and will at those times be consultation with adjoining landowners who will possibly have changed from now, and communities, and where this does happen, when and as it happens, hopefully. So and I'd just like to thank the members of the hearing committee for their work in the process I've just alluded to, and the staff that brought this forward, and getting it to this stage is a real highlight, as Councillor Butler has just alluded to. So well done, everyone, and hopefully everyone else.
Thanks for that. Councillor Dowler.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chair. Okay, please don't get me wrong. I do support a walking and cycling strategy for the district. I do have concerns with what's popped up in Motueka though. Number one, I have a concern about the community board submission. I don't know whether that was fully understood. You talk about a cycle way between Talbot Street and Manoy Street. We actually already have one of those. The community board paid for that to be built about 10 years ago. The community board one, I understand, was to support what's been mooted in the area, was a walkway, cycleway down the northern boundary of the high school between Grey Street and Talbot Street, to help link the new subdivisions through there, and then a possible link through to the back of Whitwell's car park from Talbot Street across the school land. I sat in at the start of the community board workshop that night and listened to what they said, and then Trinity and I were both there, and we both left, so we weren't making decisions, but that was the outcome of the discussion I understood that was going to be put forward. And I see that it's come up as on the blue dots there, it's between Talbot Street and Manoy Street. And as I say, it already exists. I think community board spent $10,000 getting that made back in 10 years ago. It's a fully scheduled path, over 2 metres in width. I know it's over 2 metres in width because we had to put a pole in the middle of it to stop the cars driving through there as a link road. So that's one thing. Number two, I took a picture yesterday, but it didn't turn out very well. I am concerned about the removal of parking on both sides of the road on Wakawera Street outside the high school. There's 38 car parks on the south side of the road within the school zone that we have there for the speed limit. Yesterday, 2 of those parks were empty when I went past there at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. On the north side, there was 11 on the road. There's 11 car parks outside the school. 3 were empty. The school actually have 41 car parks off-road along that boundary, where you pull off and at 90 degrees to the road. There were 2 empty, and I think I actually noticed Councillor Walker's car park in one of those car parks when I drove past. There have been additional classrooms built at the school, about 5 or 6 new classrooms being built, and there's been no increase on-site car parking. So I just wonder whether the Ministry of Ed are exempt from that, and council have to pick that up. I don't know, clarification sometime of that would be good. So around the corner, there's a heap of car parking on Grey Street, which I accept. There were 21 vehicles parked on Grey Street in the high school area yesterday afternoon. So by the time you take the car parking off Wakawera Street and off Parr Street, Grey Street is going to be chocker. So I think that council has to step up now and get its car parking strategy sorted out, particularly for this area, because it's going to be totally overloaded with the number of vehicles that were on those streets, and we're not going to have any space. Did we get a submission from the Greenwood Street Kindergarten? A reply? Okay, that's a concern to me, because if we take the car parking off both sides of the road, that takes away their drop-off and pick-up area for the adults to pick up the kids. It's a biggie. There's a lot. It's a big kindergarten. It's one of the biggest in town. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration somehow. I've had a concern the other week about the water tanker pickup area on Old Wolf Road, where they pump the water into the tankers out of the reticulation system. And I've been assured by staff now that the walking or the cycling track will have to go around that. Those truck parks are going to be there in concrete. And so the footpath will have to be realigned and go into the rec centre area so that those trucks can keep going on there. So that's cool. That's been sorted. So yeah, pretty much that's it. I agree with it, but I'm concerned about the car parking around the high school. The sports ground on Parr Street, well, that'll be what it's be. People just have to find somewhere else to park. If the Motueka Service Centre ends up on the old library site, I'm concerned about that. There'll be no parking outside that. So that'll be discussed at another meeting, no doubt. So yeah, so that's basically where I'm coming from. I just would like clarification whether you have got that cycleway between Manoy Street, Talbot Street wrong, what the community board were after. And yeah, just that's my other concerns. Thank you.
So who'd like to respond to that? And I'm sure it'll be covered in detailed design, because that's what we want. So Claire?
Yeah, through the chair, I'll try to remember all the points. The shared path there, we did include shared paths in the map that are already existing, and some of these indicate upgrades as well. A shingle path is not always suitable for a road bike, so it's easy to slip. So there may be something there already, but that could potentially be improved on, and we did receive some submissions about that. So that's that one. But in any case, it's a high-level indication of where we're looking at having shared paths. About the high school on Whakarewa Street, I was there a few days ago, actually, and had a good look in person at it. And first of all, it's a school, and coming up with the speed management plan, new rule setting that's come out from central government just recently and been approved, by 2027, maximum schools need to have a 30K zone. That's part of the reason why that's been left blank. You know, as I mentioned in the maps, been left blank and not filled in with a 50K area, because roads in front of schools and on key routes to school need to be 30K, and that will be legislation coming through. Also, I think the most important part about that is the issue of mode shift. And part of the reason why we're wanting to provide these separated cycle lanes is because the intention is that some of the people who are parking in those spaces currently will no longer be driving. And that will be using this new safe facility, unless we'll shift the demand for the amount of car parking that there is. If it's a safe route and cyclists don't have to negotiate through all of the parked cars, more parents will be happy for their children to cycle to school, and it's more enjoyable. So hopefully we'll get a higher uptake and move that shift in how much parking is demanded. In regards to the kindy, the kindy, of course, it's important to have some parking by a kindy, whether it's off street or some on street. As a mother myself, I know that, especially when you're a new mom and you're wrangling children and having trouble walking at the same time, being able to park close is important. I definitely understand that. And I think that would fall into the category that we have of where there's an acute demand for parking, to be able to provide some specific priority parking, for example, for new mums. Right. But there are a lot of side streets around there. And we've seen from road space reallocation around other kindies that actually removing that car parking and cars pulling in and out and car doors opening, blocking visibility, it's actually a lot safer for parents to cross their kids across the road. And it makes that area by the kindy feel a lot more inviting and safer. So those are my responses to that. But again, as the chair said, this is a high level strategy. And when we get to those particular points, well, there'll be further conversation, further discussion, and nothing has gotten down into the design detailed stage yet.
Good, thanks for that. I've got everybody wanting to speak, Barry. Yeah, quick.
Yeah, just please be aware, I suppose every high school is the same. The Motueka High School serves as a great rural area. A lot of the farmers' kids come in school. In fact, yesterday I saw some of the people I know, their children were leaving, obviously finished the school day, and they go off. Some of them have jobs after school, so they're not catching the school buses, so they don't come to school. And some of them is 30k away, so they're not going to bike. So, you know, like it's a rural school. We've just had the thing redesignated to whatever it's got to be to cover the people. So, yeah.
Amy, just a quick comment.
Yeah, through Mr. Chair. I mean, there is a lot of parking nearby at the sports park on Manoy Street and in the sports park area itself. Right. Well, I'm aware there was a potential extension to Manoy Street into the sports park to develop more car parking as well. So that, you know, could be a solution if there is on-street parking lost.
But it'll all have to be dealt with in detailed design stage, and that's when the rubber will really hit the road, and I'm sure that's when we'll get lots of comments. So I've got Mackenzie, Ogilvy, Hill, Walker and Turley. So I think that's everybody. So, Anne, so that shows you there will be a real interest. If there's a real interest here, there'll be a real interest in the community when the designs come out. Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you very much, through the chair. Well, I think it's an exciting day, actually, because, you know, in my view, the status quo, it simply doesn't provide our communities with what they want. And we do need to be bold, and we need to create these urban neighbourhoods that support the movement of people around without having to rely on their cars. I do agree that the devil will be in the detail, but actually in the report that we've got under paragraph 6.15, you know, there are options actually if we have a situation that's insurmountable in terms of removing parking. I do think that when we communicate the strategy, I'm thinking back to the submissions, and I think there was a degree of confusion around the fact that this is a focus in our urban areas, not our rural areas, and so I do think we need to think about that when we communicate the strategy. And actually, I'd really like to thank Claire and Drew for their efforts, but also the efforts of the submitters, because actually a lot of the points that were raised during that process, we have actually amended to accommodate it. So you know, it's fantastic to see that enthusiasm coming through from the community, and I'm going to be really pleased when we hopefully approve the strategy.
I'm sure the staff will be pleased to have that endorsement. Councillor Ogilvy, you're next.
Well, I'm going to say much the same what Councillor Mackenzie just said, Mr. Chair, because I want to endorse the strategy probably wholeheartedly and say thank you very much and about time. Because we've been discussing this for many, many years, and getting to the stage of this is really quite exciting. One question really is, it's not really a question, we have the details of funding in the long-term plan. And I mean, I think even this current year, there's some funding for Richmond and Motueka and probably other areas for cycle lanes, and next year, more funding coming through. So the implementation of the strategy with those detailed lanes and specific lanes, be very, very worthwhile and helpful. And again, thank you to the staff, thank you to the deliberations committee, and it's really quite pleasing to have this with us. So thank you.
And I think there was actually additional funding in the budget in this particular area, but how much we would get, you would never know. I think we've still got a bill with Waikakotahi that they haven't paid. So, oh, do they? Oh, well, thank God for that.
Perhaps I should say, as both a cyclist and as a car driver, when I'm driving my car, I feel much safer when I'm driving where there are cycle lanes. And so it doesn't annoy me, but it's something I query myself, why do some drivers not like cycle lanes? Because for me, it gives some sort of certainty and security for both driving and the cycling. So that's a quick comment.
I've got to agree with you there. It certainly makes a difference. And it's testing. I'm cycling on Salisbury Road at the moment, and that is testing, but at least I can go at the same speed as the traffic. The speed limit's currently 30k, so it makes it a bit easier than not passing me. Councillor Hill.
Yes, I certainly appreciate the work that's gone into this. There's a lot of work that goes into us arriving at this point. So acknowledgements to the staff that have been involved, and to those on the hearing panel and deliberations on this. So we can, look at all the detail now and wonder about this and wonder about that, which I might just do a couple of times. But just appreciating the amount of work that's gone in by all those people. Great to have a positive submission process. It's fantastic. In the business about, if you build it, they'll come. It's certainly been the case with Pohara to Takaka cycle lane. I mean, never would have thought so many people would be biking along there to town. So now people can just, from Tata Beach or somewhere, just bike to town, get their groceries, go home. People are doing that. And because it was such a diabolical road to cycle on before that. So I am very encouraged by that. And I know that as we make these changes, it'll satisfy a lot of people who are wanting to cycle and walk more. And I think for those that don't want that, who find it frustrating, I think it's a cultural shift in a way. Just in terms of the 1.11, including these changes under T, just speaking about the pinch points will generally be prioritised over the separated cycleway on Commercial Street, subject to collaboration with Waka Kotahi. Can I just a little explanation about that?
Sure, through the chair. We received quite a few submissions from residents of Golden Bay who were more concerned about the routes from more the rural townships into Takaka than the routes in Takaka itself. So the way we worked through that was still maintaining the separated cycleways and the proposals for Takaka, but saying we will, where possible, working with Waka Kotahi, because a lot of these are on the state highway, of course, look at addressing those real key hazard spots, for example, where there's just no shoulder, the shoulder just falls off. And cyclists are really put at risk in those particular places. So not whole routes, but just those pinch points that will make the whole journey safer.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies. I was thinking about the area around the township pinch points. I was just trying to get my head around that. So that's helpful. And, I know it's all money, but, wherever we get a bit of a shoulder on a road, we're putting roads in or widening them or doing them up. A little bit of shoulder makes a big, big difference to cyclists and a lot of difference to cyclists. So I don't know how we can bring that into our roading program. Just sneak it out a little wider would be great. And that would relate to, so the pinch points relating to the Pohara Takaka cycleway. That's what you're speaking about there too.
Yes, through the chair. There were a few places noted on the Pohara Takaka cycleway where the gravel had run out and it became quite uneven. So the majority of it's still fine, but there's just bits of it where it gets really slippery or floods a bit, things like that.
Yes, and I think given that's a gravel path, the maintenance of it is essential. And it makes a big, we put all that $1 million in to build that. And if we don't maintain it to the highest standard we can, we lose it. So I've been tempted to take photos as I've cycled or driven past Abalia Lane being something like this, and now we're down to this in places, through weeds, through the gravel, you know. So I know it's money, and but I think if we build it, I think we need to really maintain. So cyclists come off it to go on the road to pass someone, or they meet someone, they're getting off it to have room to get by in some places. So our maintenance program on that would, you know, needs to be really a high level of service there. Thank you.
Yeah, through Mr. Chair, I'll take the opportunity to just say absolutely it's critical, and we've been having discussions around our frequency of inspections and just keeping on top of it. You know, maintenance is cyclic, but some things do need to be prioritised. So I hear what you're saying.
Right, Councillor Turley.
Yes, this is a positive step forward, and I'd also like to acknowledge the staff. I think you've done a tremendous job, and also the community for their part. I have a couple of things I'm a bit concerned about, though. I see on page 14 of Diligent, miscellaneous EE, amend the strategy timeline to include a review of the strategy in 2027. 5 years seems quite a long time out. I'm just wondering if any minor changes that need tweaking could be done, whether that needs to be included for safety reasons. That would be one point. The other thing is that I know that there's a big problem, a safety problem, with people riding on footpaths, and the Ministry of Transport is responsible for that. And I think as a council, we need to encourage them to get on and do something. I'd like to see a letter go to the Ministry of Transport. You know, I've just witnessed outside my place 30-year-olds whizzing down the footpath with a dog in tow, and they're not looking left, right or centre, and people coming in and out. There's been some real close incidents there, and also electric vehicles are quieter, and a lot of in the neighbourhood have got those, and I think there is going to be well, probably a death because someone will just fly over their handlebars. So I think the Ministry of Transport should get on and sort that out. Nobody minds youngsters on the footpath, but it's those older users who should be more responsible. The other thing is that council can do is perhaps a newsline, put some items in about overgrown hedges and shrubs in driveways. I think that's important, and also note that EV vehicles don't make a noise, so to be aware of that. Yeah, so those would be the points I'd like to see addressed.
Jamie?
Through Mr. Chair. So the Ministry and Cabinet have been working for some time on a regulatory package regarding the use of streets and footpaths. If anything, that package may in fact make it more legal for cyclists to be on footpaths where it's deemed that those footpaths are appropriate. I mean, it's totally illegal now unless you're a small child riding a small bike. So we can't make it more illegal. But certainly giving cyclists a place for them to be in the road, which many of them feel they don't have at the moment, will go a long way to actually removing that hazard from, vulnerable pedestrians who are on the footpaths. So we've noted that, and we'll follow up on where that regulatory package is sitting, and we'll update you. And vegetation, overhanging footpaths, that's an ongoing thing. We send letters every week, constantly to people, getting them to trim their vegetation.
Claire?
Yeah, through the chair, I just wanted to add to that you're absolutely right, Councillor Turley, that's a big hazard. And part of the strategy is accessibility for everybody. And we want all people walking and cycling to be safe. And e-bikes do pose a risk to pedestrians walking on the street, for sure. And creating a safe place on the road for cyclists, particularly those commuter cyclists that are going quickly, is the largest step you can take in the direction to get them off the footpath, because nobody who's cycling to get from A to B wants to be on the footpath with high fences, it's hazardous. The footpath goes up and down. You have to dodge pedestrians. It's much easier to be on the road if there's a safe path.
Following on from that, the email that I sent through to Drew indicated the feelings in Brightwater, and I think that would be repeated in a lot of communities, that those other side roads do need, painted lines so that cyclists will have a cycle lane. I think there's adequate room in the route that I mentioned, but I won't bring it up now.
All right. So everybody's had a go. So it's been moved and seconded. Moved Councillor Butler, seconded Councillor Bryant. I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So well done. Thank you to the team. Anna, you're next. And this is the climate change update. Yeah, she's definitely gone. So over to you, Anna.
Kia ora, councillors. I will take my report as read and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
It's pretty simple. So let's see. I thought it was a very good report, and there's certainly some stuff happening. So has anybody got any questions in relation to Anna's report? We'll give them a minute to bring it up. Councillor McKenzie.
Yeah, well, thanks, Anna, for your report. I mean, I guess an observation is that there's a huge amount of information in this report, and I know that we've got a future workshop scheduled, haven't we, to actually take us through this in a bit more detail, which I think will be really good, because it's such an important area, and we need to really understand what's going on here. I guess particularly the paragraphs around the emissions reduction plan, it's complicated. It's a lot of information. I think I'm just signalling that I want to be across it more. Really, it's just an observation.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. And so thank you to Anna. I don't know where she finds the time to do all what she does do, actually, because it's just amazing the wide-ranging nature of this topic is growing, and the importance also is growing. And the report she presented covers a huge range and just brings forward a good update of where we are in council. Just one quick question though, can we perhaps have something like this indicative in the annual plan of what relationship the annual plan has with climate change process and progress, rather? So it becomes sort of a separate topic, if you like, of the annual plan.
Dwayne, you're going to comment on that?
Yeah, through the chair. What the annual plan does is sets out the program for the forthcoming year, associated budgets, and how you're going to pay for that. We typically do comment on new initiatives that we're taking on through the year, but we don't typically provide a theme, whether it be any of the services or activities that we undertake in that way, focusing just on climate change. However, having said that, where we are undertaking new initiatives, we can certainly comment on the annual plan. There is no problem with doing that.
I'm not suggesting a very detailed report as part of the annual plan. I'm just thinking of a sort of a list of items, what the plan is doing this coming year, which relates closely to the climate change action plan. That's where I'm coming from.
But through the chair, we can certainly include that. We've got to be a little bit tight on room and stuff like that, but we can certainly do that.
I've got one other question. I'd just like to make a comment. If I look at landfill being our biggest, and with landfill, our biggest contributor in landfill is construction and the waste from that. And we had some feedback on that earlier in the week. And the other one is when we have a climate event, and that just the masses that go of waste that goes when we have a significant climate event is just amazing. But I know that the landfill have done some work in relation to flaring and actually improving capture of gas. So that would have a significant impact on this. So Councillor Hill, and then I've got Councillor Bryant.
Thank you, Chair. So thank you. It's pretty interesting reading, isn't it? And there's a lot of information on there. Under 7.10, the top 10% of households with the highest emissions contribute 34 to 45% of all global emissions. In the bottom 50, 13 to 15. So that both of those comments relate to globally. Yeah, okay. Not New Zealand. Then I know New Zealand's got one of the highest household emission rates per capita globally. So it probably does relate to us.
Yes, through the chair. So this is in relation to the IPCC latest report, and we are one of the worst per capita emitters, sadly, our country. So yes, we're in that top 10% of households globally that are producing that amount of emissions.
And our key contribution, if we're in those 10%.
I'm sorry, I don't know the details, but I guess it's just our overall lifestyle and the amount of fossil fuels we burn, the travel we take. We're isolated in the world compared to everyone coming here to and from here and all the exports we send overseas. All those things will add up. But per person, we're pretty bad. Yeah.
Through the chair, I mean, one thing we can do for the next update maybe is just give you, because it's in the government documents, just the breakdown of New Zealand's equivalent CO2 emissions profile. It'll be things like primary production and electricity generation, landfills and transport, things like that. But we can give you that breakdown.
Yeah, I know that like agriculture emissions, I think are 45% or 50% or something. So they're quite high. Yeah.
Might be a small population, but we actually provide food for about 40 million people, even though we're only 5 million. So that's another thing that we do. We don't just feed New Zealanders, we feed people across the world, and that has an impact. You do need a lot of tractors to do that, I agree. Having used to drive one in an orchard all the time. Councillor Bryant and then Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Anna, for the report and the work you do. Really appreciate it. Just yesterday, Future Development Strategy, Drew presented some figures around emissions relating to communities. They would be interested to have that presented to the whole council at some stage. Some of the cutting edge work that he's been doing around the relationship between communities and their emissions.
That's something we could incorporate into one of those workshops. So we've got 2 coming up on the climate change, one at the end of June, one at the end of July. So I can
that would
work
be
with
great
them and
if
see
we
if
could
we
do
can do
that.
that. Yep.
So that would be appreciated.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, through the chair. I think it's important to see the connections between the different strategies that actually all feed into, the same program. The one we've just passed, cycling and walking, is just going to feed into it. But just in relation to the high transport emissions, now that our borders are open again and we're going to have more tourists coming, I know that because we don't have good public or commercial bus services, people tend to buy cars and vans, and they drive around in high emitting vans. And so this feeds into the public transport strategy. And I think that if we can improve our commercial bus services, then I think that tourists will maybe take them and use them instead of thinking that they've got to drive themselves everywhere. So, I think that's a project for the future. Yeah.
Dwayne?
Through the chair, I might just mention that the communications team are working on sub-branding together with Nelson City Council Communications around some of this environmental transport stuff, the passenger transport buses. walking and cycling strategy, our Streets for People initiative, together with the initiatives that Nelson City Council are undertaking as well. So you might start seeing our documents coming out with some sub-branding to kind of create a theme exactly along those lines, give it some profile.
Thanks for that, Dwayne. So we've got a mover and a seconder. Councillor Bryant, seconded Councillor Dower. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Sorry, I'm just saying that we won't, on my run sheet, it says a break for morning tea, but what we'll do is we'll go straight into the strategy, policy and environmental policy activity report so that we can get that done, so that we're done nice and early and we can have a break between meetings. That makes sense. So Dwayne, are you leading some of that?
Yeah, through the chair, I'll deal with pages 74 through to
and I know, apologies for Barry Johnson, he's involved in the WCO hearing, so that's why he's not here.
Yeah, I'll deal with pages 73 to 83 if that's okay. I will largely take it as read. The only thing I need to update you on is understand the Whakataki board met yesterday and approved the program business case. They've informally told us that, but what we haven't seen is the actual resolutions or anything like that. So we'll know exactly what they've endorsed and what they haven't endorsed later in the week.
We did ask that question of Drew and he did give us a heads up yesterday afternoon because I think I was a bit vocal in criticising them because it's taken them an awful long time for the amount of work that we put in just to make a decision.
It's all right for them to adopt it, but I wonder if there's money attached to it as well.
We'll wait and see the detail, but my understanding is everything over 2 million, we have to build a business case. And you're competing with the rest of the country. So my view is the sooner we go into regional funding, the better off we'll be. But then, so if it was regional funding was across the top of the South Island, it's 160,000 people. It's a reasonable amount that would be available. So questions on those pages, Councillor McKenzie?
Thank you. A question specifically about that Richmond program business case. Could I just be reminded, when would be the earliest that we would expect some progress in terms of the Queen Street intersection?
Through the chair, from recollection, that the program was kind of divided up into short, medium and long-term initiatives. And from recollection, the Queen Street intersection upgrade, it was in the short-term program. But do you mind if I go back and check and confirm that via email later to Council later on the day?
Yeah, no, that would be useful to get that. I mean, just an observation, really. You know, when we're thinking about FDSs and plan changes and whatnot. You know, what I'm hearing is often people are not opposed to development and growth, but they just want to understand how the necessary infrastructure is actually going to be done in alignment with growth. And you know, if we could remove all the negativity that we hear out there in the community about the Queen Street intersection, it would be a good thing. My other question just relates to the meeting that we're intending to have with the IAF team to debrief the unsuccessful applications for the Wakefield Village and the Takaka co-housing proposals. I mean, other than ranting and raving that we don't think we got our fair share of funding from central government, what do we hope to achieve in a debrief?
That debrief is later today. They gave us a booking for 4:30 this afternoon. What I want to understand is why we were not successful. I got some very high level feedback from them about it being a very good proposal, very well aligned with the criteria of the fund. So what I'll be focusing on is why in the Top of the South initiatives were the other ones picked over the proposal that we had for Wakefield specifically, and I'm trying to understand that. I guess what we're hoping longer term to get out of this is to understand better how we might align our proposals with anything else that might come out of Kaingaroa in the future. And also, if I'm honest, to pitch our case again and say, look, there obviously things can change. The government may, for example, appropriate more funds for this purpose at some stage in the future, and understand whether we'd need to go through another process, or whether that would be whether we would be basically next in line, just simply via the process we've run through. And the feedback we did get from Kaingaroa did say that if there had been, and I quote, $150 million more in the kitty, we would have been successful, given that every initiative on average received something like $25 million or thereabouts. It means that out of the 35 initiatives that were successful, we were probably around 40 out of the 88 that they went around to the next thing. So yeah, just trying to make sure we're in a better position for next time, and potentially find out whether there is a next time without having to go through this process again if the government appropriates more funds.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. That's really useful. And I'd be prepared to bet $5 that, some of the projects that have got funding won't ever get off the ground. So it'd be good to get an update on how that discussion goes.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Councillor Walker, I noticed your hand's not up, but it was up earlier, and then we lost you for a period of time. And it was in the walking and cycling strategy, and Dwayne is still here, but the others have left. Do you have a question that maybe Dwayne could answer?
Oh, yeah. Firstly, apologies. The satellite that we take our internet off apparently has lost all power. So I've literally zoomed in my car into Tasman to a different site. So my apologies for that. I guess I wanted just to feedback on the walking and cycling strategy around Detective Councillor Dowler. You are correct. That was my car at Motueka High School. I was chairing a MOT 2030 meeting, and actually parking is a conversation that we have around, you're correct. We are a rural school. And for me to attend said meeting, I do have to take a car. Would not be appropriate for me to try and bike from home. But I guess my feedback, and I know that Claire covered it quite well, is that this is big end, top end strategy, and that yes, the whole desire is to try and get less vehicles on the road. But being a rural school, we are not going to get all of our students, the 700 plus at Motueka, utilising the walking and cycling strategy. So I found comfort in the fact that it is the big end stuff, and that every case will have a chance to be reviewed and looked into. But I do hear your concerns, and I thank you, Councillor Dowler, for raising those. I'd also like to thank the team for the great job, the mahi that's gone in to get us to where we are. So not really a question, but yeah, just to endorse where I sat with that. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Yep, thanks, Councillor Walker. That's great. And technology does have its challenges, that's for sure. We've had them throughout this week. Councillor Butler.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask a question about the speed management plan and the process. The report indicates that staff will workshop the current proposals for speed reductions with councillors. How are you going to bring to us some proposed speed reductions? At what point do councillors have input into that, or what's the process really?
Yeah, through the chair. Absolutely. It has to be your speed management plan, although it's actually the Regional Transport Committee that will promulgate it as the road controlling authority. So there's a weird distinction between the Regional Transport Committee, which will have responsibility for promulgating and consulting on the plan, but ultimately it's a road controlling authority, it's your roads. So it's a bit strange, but we'll be talking to both of you at the same time. The Regional Transport Committee and including the advisory members and the full council to talk about the proposals in there. Ultimately, it'll be your plan. What will be a bit strange is that we won't be able to put that out, consult on it, and close it out in this triennium. What we'll be doing is talking to you about it, forming it up, getting you to approve it, and in all likelihood consulting on it during the elections, and having the new council hear submissions on it and then making the determinations after, the new regional transport committee making the determinations and approving it after that. So it will be probably in the first quarter of next year that that's finalised. But absolutely, you'll be involved.
All right, I've got Councillor Bryant, but just a question. In terms of page 81, you talk about the wastewater visioning that we had that workshop on. I took the opportunity to speak to Councillor McGurk in Nelson City, and they would be happy to be in the loop. So there's two councillors that have got an interest in that. And I just thought it made sense to keep Councillor Skinner and Councillor McGurk in the loop. And that means that they at least understand where we're looking. And he was quite happy with that. So I see that as a benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So just two or three questions from myself and a comment, if I may. So just in relation on page 75, just in relation to the reserves management classification, the next reserves project we'll work on will be Richmond and Lakes, Murchison wards. Is it hoped to undertake that, start that work in this term or next term of council?
Through the chair, it'll almost certainly start this term, but it's quite a long process. One of the things they have to do is check all the legal statuses of the land before they even get to talking to you about what to do with the reserve. So I'll double check with Anna. She's unfortunately left the room, but I suspect it'll be a process that's largely undertaken in 2023.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then just in relation the issue that Councillor Mackenzie raised around the Queen Street and the business case for Richmond business case. Through the FDS, we have had some communication from Waka Kotahi around these sorts of things, and some comment from a number of submitters similar to what you were saying. Yeah, that the infrastructure is sometimes out of sync with the demand for, and that's certainly what happened in Richmond West. So it's really challenging to get the timing of the two just right. And particularly when Waka Kotahi is so slow, 6 months really since we made the decision to proceed with the business case before they even make the decision. It's really frustrating, I must say. So be interesting to see the details around that. And yeah, and then just on the speed management plan on page 78, the question is, I think Councillor Button was possibly alluding to this. We are, through this process though, we are able to do a lot more roads at once, aren't we? And make it, because we've got a number of roads right across the district that people have been asking for pretty much this whole term to have the speed lowered. And we keep saying we've been waiting for the speed management plan, and now we're not even going to get there.
Yeah, through the chair, you're correct. You can do very large number of changes to speed limits through the speed management plan process. You go through the plan process, and once it's all gone through the proper process, you can ask NZTA, Waka Kotahi, to approve the changes, and we can proceed on that basis. It simply is not possible to go through the process before the triennium is out, unfortunately.
And then, of course, I understand Waka Kotahi have got to approve the roads that we lower, because they have criteria that we have to work to as well.
Correct. So at the workshop, you'll be briefed not only on the local environment, but the process we've got to run through and all the fishhooks involved in that. It's meant to be an easier process overall. So you do a bit more work up front, you take a strategic view of speed limits across the district as a whole, and then you can start implementing it. Look, rather than picking it off.
Pigs lying in my section over there.
Get out, Councillor Bright. Right, we'll move on. Councillor Turley.
I was just wondering, under the infrastructure and planning policy about the Richmond program business case, it says that staff expect to have it approved on the 24th of May. Has that happened?
Okay. Yes, it
Sorry,
has.
I probably missed that.
We don't have the details yet, but I understand informally it has been approved.
Okay, good. And the other thing I'm just wondering about with infrastructure, if there could be perhaps a staff comment on where we're at with the Upper Mootry footpath, which I've been pushing for ages, and I know there's good support around the table for. Yeah, I don't want that to sit on the table. I want it to be progressed. It's a huge safety issue. And it's also an environmental issue when parents have to come in from their farms to pick up the kids, to take them down to the rec centre, and then go back and pick them up and take them back to school. The whole community is suffering there. And yeah, I'd just like to know where that's at, please. And if we haven't made any progress, what we're going to do in the future.
Richard? It's Jamie's project, as I understand it.
Yeah, and I understand we're, as you know, we've been trying to bring that specific landowner, get agreement with them on it, and we're constantly being pushed back. We're now following a Public Works Act process of desiring and taking. So we're basically going to be taking it, but that takes time. So we are working on that now.
At least that process has started, so that helps, because it's certainly, I know that they changed routes and all sorts of stuff, and I ended up with complaints from one lady. So.
Well, I think we've got the best route, and I congratulate the staff on the move they're taking. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I just say that obviously Public Works Act does create kind of friction in particular with the landowners, but at the end of the day, this is for the greater good. And sometimes we have to implement it. Our preference is to try and negotiate and have a willing buyer, willing seller, but we've been constantly pushed back on this one. And we've got to the point now where we have to basically be strong-armed and deal with it.
And it has to be done. So as simple as that. So that's what we do. All right, Dwayne. So I think that covers everything in your section. Anna, would you like to come up to the table? So Anna is being Barry today. Because Barry, as I said, Barry's in the room next door, listening to all the evidence. So you start at page 84, as I understand it, at environmental policy update. And are there any questions of Anna, seeing as she's come down? Christine.
Thank you, through the chair. Just with regards again to the FDS. Are the deliberations on Zoom, and will councillors who are not part of that be sent the link so that we can, listen in if we want?
My understanding is they will be on Zoom, because we had some people on Zoom this week. With Susan, do you want to?
Yep, there will be a Zoom link attached to the agenda. So when the agenda comes out tonight to you for the meeting, that will have a link to the Zoom on it. So you're more than welcome to attend there or to come into the council chamber.
I think we've got programmed 1.5 days next week. I think it's Tuesday and Thursday.
Yes, that's correct.
No other questions. So there's obviously progress on the TEP, and everything else looks pretty much in track, except we've got Korowai Tupu Springs is in progress, and we know that the court case is ongoing now. So, Anna?
No, I've got.
I just well, Anna's been really busy, as you know, Mr. Chairman, with the FDS, and that's taken a lot of her time. But I just wondered if there was any more update on the Richmond South, other than what's in the report. We've had the engagement. What's the next step?
The next step is from what I understand, they're waiting until the adoption of the FDS before they progress that project. I think the feeling was that there was too much sort of going on in that space at the moment, and they just needed to reset and wait until that document had been adopted. And then they'll kick off again.
That might apply to a number of projects across the district, will it? Particularly potentially private plan changes and the likes. They'll be waiting to see the outcome, I guess.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a little way away.
There is certainly some plan changes to come that are programmed for some of our smaller centres, as I'm aware.
Yeah.
So Wakefield, Brightwater and Murchison, we're progressing with the development of the provisions and getting ready for notification. Notification, I think, is aiming, we've got a meeting at the end of July, early August. So that's progressing quite well and as planned.
Mapua and Motueka is we're doing more consultation around those two growth plan changes.
So with the relevant councillors, because that's going to be a draft, isn't it? That's coming out. That will come to the ward councillors or relevant councillors.
The notification material for the, yes.
Yeah, that would be appreciated.
Yes, we can do that for sure.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Dowler, then Councillor McKenzie.
Yes, right. You may not be able to answer this, but a while ago we had the building guys in here to say that they had to assess buildings in certain towns for earthquake issues if they fell over in an earthquake and blocked the emergency vehicle access. And I know High Street Motueka was one of the areas, but we've heard nothing since. So I just, at some stage in the future, could we have an update from somebody of where that process is at? Yeah, thanks.
Yep, sure. Not sure who, but we'll track them down, hunt them down and get an answer.
I remember that happening because it was specific routes that it affects. Probably does come under regulatory, but staff can take it away and come back with it and let us know. Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you through the chair. Anna, I could understand if you don't have an answer to this question, but just with respect to the growth plan change for Mapua, so in the report we talk about the fact that it's slowed down. We talk about the fact that we're working with the community association and the community over the coming months. I guess my question is, at a high level, do you have a view about when we might, what is the time frame for it?
So through the chair, we've got an internal meeting next week to look at what the next steps are for that Mapua project. We need to talk with our infrastructure and reserves colleagues and work through what the plan is, and then we will talk to the community association and provide some kind of timetable, and we can discuss that with you as well as we work through that process.
Okay, great. I appreciate that, because obviously I think how we communicate on an ongoing basis is going to be really important, given the great deal of interest that's been expressed by the community.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you, Anna. So no other questions at this time. Have I got a mover? Councillor Dowler. Councillor Butler is seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Right, so I think the next item on the agenda is the action sheet.
Mr. Chairman, can I just comment on the Richmond business case? I just want to clarify something. There was comment made that the short term there might be some improvements to Queen Street. Can I just make it clear that that's not the deviation? I think the deviation's longer term. I just want to make sure that that's quite clear. Otherwise, there could be interpretation of the Queen Street situation. The deviation's short term and it's not.
I think those of us that went to the workshops know that the deviation is at least 10 years away, and it was improvements to that flow at those traffic lights and along Gladstone Road. Some initiatives along Gladstone Road, if I remember rightly.
That's correct.
And it was removing some parking spaces as well on Gladstone Road.
I just wanted to clarify that just in case there's misunderstanding about what that improvements to Queen Street intersection means.
It'll be good to have that in the minutes.
Yep.
So that's, if you can make a note of that, Tara, that's really important. All right, so we've got the, I'm just trying to find the action sheet. So there's only 3 items on it. Would someone like to move that those be approved? Councillor Turley, you happy to do that? All right. And Councillor McKenzie, you happy to second? Right, we'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So I think that is our conclusion. So I'm going to go to Council, and that might be a record time for one of our meetings. But we didn't stop for a cup of tea. So Councillor McKenzie is. Yeah, I do. But there's a reason. We're better to have a break now because we've got a full council meeting at 11:30. Extraordinary meeting. So Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you. Kia hora te Marino, kia whakapapa pounamu te moana, aroha atu aroha mai, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou katoa.